Good morning, everyone. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sam Koenig. I'm part of the Education Committee here at TRM. Today, our program is in memory of the Kristallnacht, and we have with us today two distinguished guests. We'll start not alphabetic order, but geographical order. So close to Connecticut, Stanford, we have with us Dr. Shai Pilnik. And in Leipzig, Germany, over the Atlantic is with us Rabbi Zsolt Balla, who actually is from the synagogue that he is the rabbi of. Before I hand over the mic, so to speak, to Dr. Shai Pilnik, who will facilitate the discussion, I'll first introduce the two speakers. You will have an opportunity at the end of the program to ask questions, but this is going to be an informal discussion between Dr. Shai Pilnik and Rabbi Balla. So, Dr. Shai Pilnik, or as friends, we go by first name. Shai is the grandson of Holocaust survivors from Lithuania and Poland, who immigrated to Israel from the former Soviet Union about a decade after the founding of the State of Israel. Shai is the new director of the Emil and Jenny A. Fish Holocaust and Genocide Studies Center at Yeshiva University. And prior to that, he was the executive director of the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center in Milwaukee. Shai did his undergraduate at Hebrew University, his master's degree at McGill University, and his PhD at JTS. Then we have with us Rabbi Zsolt Balla, who is currently serving the Jewish community of Leipzig since 2009, and is also the head rabbi of the federal state of Saxony since 2019. Rabbi Balla is also on the board of the Orthodox Rabbinical Conference of Germany since 2012, which is the equivalent, I would say, of RCA. He was born in Budapest in Hungary, where he finished his high school at the Lauda Yavne High School and earned his MSc in engineering and management at the Budapest Technical University. He then decided to pursue his studies in Rabbanut and was enrolled in the, at the time, newly reopened Hildesheimer Seminary in Berlin and graduated from there in 2009. His wife Marina was born in the Ukraine, and she was 13 years old when she and her family moved to Leipzig. Without further ado, I will now hand over the mic, so to speak, to Shai. Shai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov. I wanted to welcome you all to our program, and first of all, thank you for taking the time on such a nice, great weather Sunday to be with us and to remember. Tomorrow night, so we are a day and a half before the 82nd anniversary of Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. This is a key moment in the history of the Holocaust, where German Jews, the first community that came under the attack of the Nazis, faced the violent wrath of the Nazi regime. For the people who experienced Kristallnacht, this was an unprecedented event that marked the transition from the legal attack against the Jewish people to attack via violent means. It started with Kristallnacht, with the burning of 267 synagogues, with the destruction of 7,500 stores, with the destruction of Jewish home, and of course, with the death of close to 100 Jews. These are the official numbers. We believe that the unofficial were much higher, and also the arrest of 30,000 Jewish men. There's no doubt that for German Jewry, this was a shocking moment, and that's why it came down in history to be considered as the prelude or the symbol for the Holocaust at large. Now, when we look at German Jewry from an American standpoint, but I also say from an Israeli standpoint, we tend to look at Germany and German Jewry as a ruin of memory, as a distant place belonging to our past. And sometimes we forget that Jewish life in Europe, although yes, it was destroyed and annihilated, did and does still experience a slow revival. So for us, it's an incredible opportunity to learn about Kristallnacht in a particular German locality, and also to compare then, now, and also consider the future. I actually came upon and was introduced to Rabbi Jolt Bala through my dear friend Sam. When I was running the Holocaust Education Resource Center in Milwaukee, we were looking for a speaker from a German community, a representative of a German community, in an initiative that we did with the two Jewish day schools of Milwaukee called Repairing the Glass. We wanted the students to learn about the history of German Jewry as a way of repairing the destruction that took place during that time. Of course, the repairing process can never be complete, but we thought that education can be the most healing tool we can have as we move forward and look at the dark past and turn our gaze towards a brighter future. This is a quite long introduction. I first of all wanted to say good morning, Rabbi Bala. So, what a pleasure.
Oh, wonderful. Good morning. And with your permission, dear Shai, dear Sam, we are all good friends. So we keep to Jolt and Shai and Sam, I believe, today's discussion. It's a true honor for me to speak to you and to such a distinguished community as the River Million. And Shai, it's a great pleasure to reconnect after these years. And I'm very, very glad that you and also Sam is continuing pursuing this very, very important work. Is actually, according to my opinions, is opening doors to the American Jewish community uh, to see Europe in action. Europe is alive and well, even though you might think it's a little bit different. And obviously, there are a lot of open questions, and we do not know what the future holds. But there is Jewish life here, and there's something to pursue here as well.
It is alive, and it's alive and well. And I can also say that the background behind you is not just a Zoom background photo, right? It's a real
That is
background.
true. This is real. This is not a virtual background, but it's as beautiful as it's supposed to be a virtual background. This is one of two historical synagogues in the federal state of Saxony. As you might know, Germany is also a federal state, exactly like the United States of America. And the synagogue there in the whole federal state after the pogrom night on the 9th of November 1938, only two synagogues remained. This shul where I'm speaking to you from, and the synagogue in the city of Görlitz. The synagogue here is actually alive and well. Somebody's already ringing in the door because usually this time of the day we have Mincha and Mariv services. The sun is going down pretty early here. And this historical synagogue is the only one that is up until today functioning. The other synagogue in Görlitz, which is close to the Polish border, it's still in existence, but there's no Jewish community there. There's no Jewish life in Görlitz right now. The synagogue building is actually a subject of debate between the city and the cultural centers of the place, of what to do with the synagogue there. And we hope that there will be some sort of a revival there as well.
Okay, thank you. Jolt, we will talk about the synagogue. You actually promised me that you will give us a tour of the synagogue later on. But let's first of all start with Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht, or Crystal Night in English. This is the common name to refer to the night between November 9th and 10th, 1938, and the pogrom that I mentioned before. In Hebrew, we call it Leil Abdolach, translated as Kristallnacht. But I remember you told me once that Kristallnacht as a term is not common in Germany, and I'm curious why.
It is absolutely true. What we use here is the night of the pogrom night. It's very important that I believe Germany is really spearheading in Europe amongst those countries that are taking responsibility for what happened here during the Shoah and during the times of the persecution. And therefore, they also do not feel it would be anyways a fitting term to call something associated with a beautiful thing as a crystal. This is not crystal. This is a night of the broken glass. It's a night of a pogrom. It's a disgrace. It's a historical disgrace that we have to carry on our shoulders. And I say we, because I believe it's also ours as well. And it's very important in the German daily discourse. The 9th of November is never remembered as the Kristallnacht. It's always remembered as the pogrom night.
So, in order to understand what was destroyed, I think we have to go back to what existed prior to the destruction. So, please, I don't know how much you want to provide us detail about the German Jewish life at large, but if we zero in on Leipzig, tell us what this community was like.
So Leipzig is fascinating. The Jewish history in Leipzig itself is fascinating. If you take a look, Sam is from Vienna. One of the most prominent rabbis of the 13th century in Vienna, Rabbi Moshe of Vienna, who's also called by his incredible book, Or Zarua. He already writes about a case between two merchants here in Leipzig. So Leipzig is historically situated on the two main merchant roads of Europe, the one that leads from east to the west and the one that leads from the north to the south. Leipzig is the crossroad. And this is the reason why the Leipzig Fair was such an event. So it drew all the Jewish merchants from all over Europe, and especially from Eastern Europe. This was the center of fur trade. Fur traders who came from Lithuania, fur traders who came from Poland. You might have heard of the book, the Chaye Adam. Chaye Adam was written in the 19th century by Rabbi Abraham Danzig, who was a rabbi of Vilna at the last 8 years of his life. But before that, actually, while he wrote this incredible halachic book, he was commuting to Leipzig every single year, 2-3 times, which was back then not a short road, bringing all the goods. And he compares actually Torah learning to coming to the fair in Leipzig. It's if you look up the Hagdama, the preface to the book Chaye Adam, you will see the word Leipzig written down. It was a fascinating and really full of life, Jewish life here until the 30s. And during the 30s, there were on the peak. There were about 18,000 Jews living in the city of Leipzig, which was really a Jewish center, not just for Eastern Germany, but for Germany and a little bit in Europe as well, even though there was no possibility for Jews to settle here until approximately 172 years before.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's go back to the nights leading to Kristallnacht and Kristallnacht itself. I know that the synagogue where you're standing right now is not the largest synagogue in Leipzig. Actually, the largest one has been razed to the ground, and in the place where it existed, there's a memorial today. Tell me a little bit about the synagogue, about the events of Kristallnacht, and also about how the Brody synagogue, from which you're speaking right now, how it was spared.
So there were 18 synagogues in Leipzig. Most of them were Orthodox prayer houses. The big synagogue that you mentioned, where the memorial is, was one of the few Reform synagogues in the city. And the night leading up to the Kristallnacht was actually the same all over the country. It was an organized attack by all the National Socialist groups, and it was coordinated. People probably knew ahead, I believe also the authorities. It was a very terrible night. So what made this synagogue survive? All the other synagogues were self-standing buildings. This shul where I'm speaking to is a little bit of the history of the Brody Shul. It is called the Brody Shul because the community who established it were Jews from Poland, from the city of Brody. Brody today, you will not find it in the map of Poland, you will find it in the map of the Ukraine. It's a country that used to belong within 100 years to 5 different states. It used to be Poland, then it used to be Austro-Hungary, then it was Czechoslovakia, then it was Soviet Union, and today is the Ukraine. Brody, the Jews who established the city here, the synagogue here, were from Brody. Now, they did not really have the chance to build a new synagogue. So what they did is they actually took a regular house with apartments, a regular apartment building, and they bought the first 2 floors, the ground floor and the first floor. And they opened it together. So the shul has been open in 1904, and until the mid-20s, this was the Orthodox center Leipzig. In the 20s, in late 20s, they had to build a bigger house because simply this shul was not able to welcome everybody who wanted to pray here, and that's when they built the Eitz Chaim synagogue in Leipzig. Now, one of the main rabbinical figures, the last one who was leading this synagogue, was Rabbi Ephraim Karlebach. You might know the name of Karlebach. Karlebach was a big rabbinical dynasty. Rabbi Joseph Karlebach in Hamburg, Rabbi Ephraim Karlebach in Leipzig, Rabbi Naftali Hartwig Karlebach in Berlin. His son was also obviously a very known musician in the Jewish world. So Rabbi Ephraim Karlebach was Shlomo Karlebach's uncle, living here in Leipzig and leading the Jewish community here. And you might ask something very interesting. You say, I told you that this was an Orthodox center, but from the picture, what you see behind me, you see very clearly that the bima is not in the middle, not located in the middle of the place, but it's in the front. How could that be? The truth is that right after the war, when they renovated the shul, for whatever reason, they decided to bring it to the front. We do not have pictures, but we know that originally the bima was also in the middle of the space. This was always an Orthodox prayer house. But after the war, the Jewish community shrunk to mere few hundred. And in 1990, there were altogether 25 Jews living in this whole city. So the synagogue survived because this was the only shul that was part of the existing building structure, and therefore the Nazis could not light it on fire without actually destroying other and further apartments. That was the only chance for them to survive. This was the thing that saved the synagogue, and this is today's synagogue that provides us an incredible, I would even say, safe haven where we can pray together in a real, authentic synagogue.
Do we know how many of the 14,000 Jews of Leipzig were killed during the Holocaust, or would you say that a substantial number managed to flee Germany before the war broke out, or before the Holocaust started?
Was in the peak. The 18,000 and 14,000 have been deported, mostly to Theresienstadt, and from Theresienstadt on to Auschwitz. And we also know that in the middle of 30s, few thousand fled to England, to Israel, and to the United States. Today, they also have an organization, so to say, the remnants of the former Leipzigers. But this is a really even more shrinking community. So after the war, only 200-300 Jews returned to the city. And since it was already then to be expected that this part of the country will be under Soviet occupation, so they tried to do all their best to they could to leave this place. Many people went to Vienna, many people went to Berlin or fled to West Germany out of those few hundred. So today, and only really a handful of Jews remained here. And in the 1990s, the very beginning of the 1990s, the community shrunk to a number of 25 Jews living in the whole city.
25 Jews, not 25,000.
Not 25,000,
25 Jews. In other words, we can really talk about a community that was essentially decimated. But from 25, we move up to 1,200. In other words, the community, mathematically, I'm going to put it in very rough terms. We're talking about a community that now is 50 times larger than it was back in the 1990s. So tell me a little bit about this Jewish revival. Who are the Jews? How do they identify as Jews? What kind of connection do they have to an established community? I'm curious.
So if just a little preface, if you want to read a little bit about what does it mean to be a Jew in wartime Leipzig, there was a Rabbi Shlomo Warman, who wrote a book called Lest We Forget. It's published by the Mesor Publications, the Art Scroll. It's available in English at your location. He writes that at the end of the book, when he last visited Leipzig in 1989, that he said the city has practically become Judenrein. And was really the feeling. And very often we give up. And then suddenly something happens in the world, the way the Kadosh Baruch Hu is really running everything, and it's not in our hands. Uh, and he suddenly started flooding Germany with former Soviet Jews. I really mean flooding within about 2 decades, close to 150,000 Jews from the former Soviet Union relocated to Germany. The Kohl administration in 1990, when there was a big anti-Semitic wave in the former Soviet Union, they decided that they will give a quota of 10,000 Jews per year to relocate to the country. The law to come to Germany was even stricter than the law of return to Israel. Here you had to prove that not just one of your grandparents, but actually one of your parents were Jewish. Now, you might know that in the former Soviet Union, to be Jewish, it wasn't a matter of a personal feeling or identity. It was stamped in your birth certificate. It says nationality, Yevrei, Jew. So suddenly, a flood of immigration of former Soviet Jews started coming to Germany. And so suddenly, out of the blue, these 25 Jews who were living in Leipzig, they felt really taken over by a big group of Jews, over 1,300 who came, and then now it's shrank because very many of the young people uh, within the last 20 years left Leipzig because simply the job market was much, much better in West Germany and not in, don't forget, we are now in the former East. And there are all still some economical differences between East Germany and West Germany. But still, the numbers rose. Here, maybe I could tell you a little bit of the story of my wife. My wife, as Sam mentioned, was born in the Ukraine in 1983. And when she was 11 years old was the time when the family decided that they will submit their application to come to Germany. My in-laws felt that in former Soviet Union, it's impossible to provide a proper, balanced education for the children, to my wife and her brother. They did not have relatives in America. They were simply not able to immigrate to the United States. And they had no reason to go to Israel. They are coming from a absolutely non-religious family, just like myself, but maybe this is a little bit later. Come to Germany because simply the conditions were great. Now, you came to Germany, it wasn't that you can settle wherever you wish. They were ascribed to one of the federal states. So they had to settle in the federal state of Saxony. And at those days, like we're speaking about 1997, the countries, especially the eastern part, is under serious reconstruction. Everything is still in the former Soviet ruins, when you can say that. But my father-in-law was an architect, so he had an incredible eye to see which is the nicest city of all of the areas. They visited 3 cities, the city of Dresden, Chemnitz, and Leipzig. And my father-in-law said that, well, Leipzig is going to be the top out of the 3. So the family decided to come to Leipzig. So when they came in 1997, the first address to go to is the Jewish community. Why? Because they speak Russian, because they speak our language. And so suddenly, a small group of youngsters and with the elderly as well, they started to come to the Jewish community. That was the point where they could meet people with their background. The Jewish community became a tool to integrate these people to German life. But again, you can imagine what sort of level of religiosity was here in Germany in the beginning of 1990s. Out of those 25 members who were here, everybody was intermarried. All that they did each year is they came together to a non-kosher restaurant in the first night of Pesach. That was everything that they had in Jewish. And maybe once in a while they brought a rabbi, actually also back then from Hungary, because Budapest had the only rabbinical seminary, a Neolog rabbinical seminary, that was able to produce rabbis for the former Soviet bloc countries. So each year somebody came to visit here for the high holidays from Budapest, but that was it. And suddenly these Jews say, we want more. We came to Germany because we want to live Jewish. My wife has no clue about Yiddishkeit, but it says in the passport, not in the passport, in the birth certificate, nationality Jewish, Yevrei. And still the grandparents carry some Jewish values. So they want to come, they want to be part of it. And then suddenly these group of youngsters, they decide to basically inspire one another to become more and more observant. And then this is when other players in Eastern Europe come in. For example, the Lauder Foundation, for example, the Joint Distribution Committee that helped revive Jewish life. Here in Leipzig, especially, the Lauder Foundation was very, very active. And my wife and her friends, they started to affiliate with the same yeshiva where I studied in Berlin, because that was the Lauder Center, so to say, in Germany. And uh, and suddenly, out of the blue, today we are the only community with this size of 1,200 members. Again, not people who, out of these 1,200, not one person, except our children, obviously, were born in a Shomer Mitzvot home. Nobody. And still, we have here a Shomer Mitzvot minyan on the Shabbat, and a very welcoming atmosphere in the shul. Sam's wife, Aliza, had the chance to spend the Shabbat here in our community a few years ago with a wonderful group of incredibly bright YU students from the YU Center for Jewish Future. We have daily minyan until the beginning of the corona pandemic. We had no problem of gathering daily minyan morning, afternoon, in the evening without actually a paid core or membership for those who come. And again, nobody out of them, including the rabbi himself, were born in a frum home, in a place where they bring Yiddishkeit from.
So,
So
Joel,
this
you're
is really
mentioning the
fascinating.
rabbi himself. You're mentioning
Yes.
the rabbi himself. And I know that we're talking about Jewish revival, which is based on Jews from the former Soviet Union. You are not from the former Soviet Union, but you are from the former Soviet bloc. You actually grew up in Hungary.
Yes, that's
So
right.
I'm curious, before you give us, and I know we are all gearing up for it, you're giving us a tour of the shul. I'm curious to hear about your fascinating Jewish journey and where it began and where you are now.
So just very, very briefly, I really try to keep it quick because it could be a story even on its own. But I'm actually a Lauder product. The Lauder Foundation, I did not know that I was Jewish until the age of 9. When one of my favorite books in my youth was the Bible. When I say the Bible, I mean the extended version. I love the stories. I was just simply amazed by all the stories. And in 1988, when I was 9 years old, suddenly the churches started to open their doors. And I saw a sign in my elementary school that a local Catholic church, 3 stops away from us, has a Sunday school for Bible. And I went to my mom and says, I want to learn more about this. Could I go? And she told me, we need to talk. So I found out that I'm actually Jewish. And not only that, the circumcision that I had, and I always been told that it's only for medical purposes, turns out to be done by a proper mohel, even though I was not 8 days old, but only 4 months old. But in the 1970s, late 1970s, somebody who had a Brit Milah by a mohel was very, very rare. My father was not present at this moment. I have to mention my father himself was not Jewish, but he was always very, very supportive to me and to my mother as well. He wasn't there. And the reason why he wasn't there, because he was a lieutenant colonel of the Hungarian army. If they find out that in the 1970s he partakes in a religious rite such as circumcision, he would have been really fired from the army and he would have a hard time. So I find out suddenly that I'm, according to Halakha, I'm Jewish. I find out that my grandfather on my mother's side, he's a Levi. And suddenly the stories that I love about the Bible, it became a family story. When I read about the story of Joseph and his brothers, it's Levi, my great great grandfather. Okay, I'm not a Levite, I'm not a Levi, but still, he was my great grandfather somewhere along the road. And it's just fascinating. So my mother asked, would you rather start at the basics? And would you like to go to synagogue? That's when I find out that all the family of my grandfather and my mother, they are Jewish. and her brother-in-law was my grandfather's brother-in-law was Chazan in one of the Nelo synagogues in Budapest. And he said, we have a wonderful young rabbi, and he was really amazing, who instilled in us an incredible love for and of striving to know more. And he took me to the synagogue, and I started attending Sunday school, but in a shul. So when I was 12 years old, this rabbi was on the board of the Lauder Foundation School, the Lauder Yavne Jewish School, and he asked my parents, would you send your son there? And my mother was a little bit hesitant. Up until today, she has no idea where she went wrong that her son has become a rabbi, but now she's much more accepting to the story. But they agreed. Now I went to Jewish school at the age of 12, but it was a secular Jewish school. But within these 12 years, we had access at least to knowledge. And when I was about 19 years old, this is when I started to attend the Lauder Joint International Summer Camp as a madrich in Hungary. This is a fascinating international summer camp that has also American, Israeli groups, but mainly European groups from all over. And these were the days when I decided to take, so to say, I came to the cognitive dissonance. I know these things. Why don't I keep it? And my answer to this cognitive dissonance was I started actually keeping things. So when I finished my studies in university when I was 23 years old, I decided to take a year off to yeshiva, but my parents would not have supported me to go to Israel. And then the Lauder Foundation opens the yeshiva in Berlin. They had no idea that they are just sending me to my fate to Berlin. That is going to, so to say, drag me in much deeper to Yiddishkeit than they could have imagined before. So in 2002, I came to Germany to study for a year, and this year has become 2 years. Then already they understood there's no way back. So that's when I spent a year in yeshiva in Israel as well. And I returned in 2005 to the first smicha program. And in 2009, I received my ordination. And actually, within these years, in 2007, I married my wife, and I think it's fascinating that it's easier to find a proper and very quality shidduch in Europe, but Sam and Aliza know that already sometimes than in the United States. So I feel very lucky, and I married into this community. So this is very different. I did not come here for a job. I actually um, I actually married into this community. The question is which yeshiva in Israel? Yeshivat Midrash Shmuel, one of the I would call pseudo Haredi yeshivas in Shalei Chesed in Yerushalayim, which was very fascinating, where people who send their children there, this is the place where they get English Derech Eretz and Brisker Limud. So which was very fascinating as well. And my Rebbe, who my first Rebbe in Berlin, was also a student of that yeshiva. So I in 2009. I started working here as a rabbi, but only as a visiting rabbi. Every second week, we came here to Leipzig, and in 2010, actually, we moved here with my wife. So we've been living here for over 10 years. So this is the short version of the.
Well, it was short. Thank
story.
you. Thank you. And if we had more time, we would also get
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was already too long.
the longer one. No, it's wonderful and it's so inspiring. Jolt, why don't you give us a tour? I mean, from the little we can see right now, it
So
looks like
let me change the camera.
yes.
With your permission. I'll try to no sorry. Let me just switch the camera. This and also the microphone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Just can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, very good. So this is the synagogue. Welcome to the synagogue. As you can see, again, we are now in a regular apartment building. Up until today, beyond the shul, above the shul, there are apartments. This is the Mizrach wall. As I mentioned to you, the bima used to be situated here in the middle of the place. This shul is a typical Moorish style synagogue of the late 19th and early 20th century. You might know about historicism. The Jewish communities always wanted to emphasize their origins from the Near East, and therefore they built it in the Moorish style, which was basically how people in Europe imagined how the Near East looks like. This is the over there in the middle. We have currently two Torah scrolls. Just let me just come allow out a little bit. As you can see, because of the Corona pandemic, the place where the Baal Tefillah stands is also surrounded, so nobody can enter, and many of our seats are also closed down. So to make sure that people are spreading out, there are altogether 159 seats here downstairs, and above us in the Ezrat Nashim, there are another 131 seats, making a total of 290 seats in the synagogue. The way the synagogue looks like today is pretty much the way it looked before the war. So the blue scheme is definitely was part of it. These ornament elements on the side and on the columns are almost the original. The shul has been renovated since the war already 3 times. Last time about 20 years ago. Let me get a little bit better bird's eye view. This is our Aron HaKodesh. Again, the original wooden carving above with the Aseret HaDibrot and the 2 lion forms. This plaque with the brachot for the Torah reading, we received it from the organization of former Leipzigers in Israel. This organization up until today come to Leipzig a few times a year. I'm coming now up to the Aron HaKodesh, and actually these stairs are quite steep. This is the way it looks like from this angle. The synagogue, you can have a complete bird eye view of how it looks like upstairs in the Ezrat Nashim. It's very, very nicely located in a way that everybody, even the women who sit in the last row, can see everything that is going on here in the Bima. It has been actually a very, very interesting question. You might know that there are some poskim who, during the time of the Reformation, they actually forbade people to pray in synagogues where the Bima is located in the front. When I came to Leipzig, we also asked this question: do we have the obligation to take it back to the middle? So we got an answer from Diane Ehrentreu, who is the Av Beit Din who used to be the Av Beit Din of the London Beit Din, and from whom we also got a smicha. He said that this should not be our priority, because in Germany there were also Orthodox synagogues where the bima was in the front, but maybe one day when it's possible. These are the beautiful windows. The sun has gone down already, so you cannot now see how it looks like, but they are very nice and colorful windows. And so this is basically the shul. You can obviously, I'm so sorry but now that also my head is here, and as you can see, because of the Corona pandemic, actually we have services in the synagogue still every day 3 times. And even if we do not have a minyan, always streaming of the services on Facebook and via Zoom as well. Which is really, I think it's really amazing. Let me just switch back to the camera, to my computer.
And I have to say in the meantime, Rabbi Bala, that following some of your streamline, you didn't know this about me, following some of them from the United States, anyone who does cannot be fascinated and inspired by your singing. So we're going to have a little encore, a little surprise for our viewers today. But before then, I wanted to thank you for a wonderful presentation and to open up the floor now as we are approaching 15 minutes before 11, to open up the floor for questions from our audience.
If you have any questions, it's Sam here. It'll be easier if you can write them down on the chat box, which you will see on your right hand side. We'll wait a few seconds, and if not, we'll continue with the program. And also, if you have questions, when Joel finishes, we will will answer them. So let's wait a little bit, and if not, Shai, we can ask Joel to start, right?
Yes, I will start with the first question. Jolt, what's your vision for the Leipzig Jewish community in the next 5 or 10 years? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but still.
It's a fascinating question. And before I answer, let me go back a little bit, one step, a little bit behind. In 2008, actually, before we moved to Leipzig with Marina, my wife, we had the chance to do a 3-week internship at the Orthodox Union in Kashrus. And within those 3 weeks, we had the chance to visit different synagogues in the Upper West Side and the Upper East Side. And when one question always came up, and this question is, why are you in Germany? What the heck are you doing in Germany? Why do Jews have to be there? So I think it's important to answer that in order to look for some sort of a future. And my answer to that question is, very often, if the Kadosh Baruch Hu about 25, 30 years ago would have asked our opinion, here I have 120, 150,000 former Soviet Jews, where should I take them? You probably would have answered, take them to Israel, bring them here to the United States, but he did not ask your opinion. And he did not ask my opinion. He just put them down here in Germany. So the question is not why there are Jews today in Germany, but the question is, how do we deal with the situation? We have to take responsibility. This is the reason why I actually find myself here. Obviously, it would be nice to have some more kosher restaurants around everything, but I bound to this place because I have to take responsibility for the people who are here. This is my background, my education obligates me to do that. And if I speak like that, then the question is exactly what you asked, Shai. What is the future? And the answer is I have no idea. But there's only one thing. The way we have to approach this is that we do not give up. That means my Rebbe, Rabbi Shabtai Abraham Rappaport from Yerushalayim, asked me, what will I say if I succeed and tomorrow all my community makes Aliyah and Leipzig will be void of Jews? I will say it's a success story. But is this realistic? I do not know. If tomorrow the whole community will become Shomer Mitzvot, I do not think it's reality. But there's one thing that I have to do in my power is to make sure that there's access to authentic Yiddishkeit here. And this is however it goes down. As long as there are people here and Jews living in the city, we are bound to them. Because this is the responsibility that we took, and this is the response with my wife, and this is a responsibility that we have to live with. So this is we do not actually have eyes somewhere else in the world, even though I have to at this point say I'm not a Chabadnik. But if there is one aspect that I really admire is that devotion for the local communities that we have. If I constantly look outside where to go next, that means I actually abandon the people here. So this is something that I cannot do. But at the same time, I will be obviously very happy if I find somebody who is younger than me, who has more fire in them than me, because 20 years ago, I loved Kiev. Even 10, 15 years ago, I loved it. But now in my early 40s, I understand it's not the same thing. And I have the personality changes. It's a healthy reason why people above a certain age do not go always into youth education, but they are more involved in community and running a community. So I hope that one day there will be a possibility for us to find somebody who successes us and will take Leipzig to the next level. In the meantime, our goal is, and this is when I came and when we came to Leipzig, Rabbi Joshua Spinner, the executive vice president of the Ronald S. Lauder Foundation, who told us the most important thing, no matter where you go, the important is that you leave a better place behind when you leave. So that's my main goal, that one day when it comes, which I hope not going to be too soon, with the exception of all of us moving to Israel. But if it's not the case, then my goal here is leaving a better and more committed community behind than it was when we first came to Leipzig.
It's so powerful.
So Shai, I see we have two more questions. So do you want to ask them, or shall I?
I can ask them. Yes, I looked at the chat. Joel, thank you. I do have to say, metaphorically, you embodying your personality, the medieval Leipzig fair. You connect East and West. You are from Hungary. Your wife is from the former Soviet Union, from Ukraine. You serve German Jews, Jews from the former Soviet Union, but also your English, speaking about the West, is just impeccable.
Had
To me, you're
very,
an
very good
inspiring.
teachers in high school.
Thank you. Well, you should thank them. What is Jewish education like for the Leipzig community today?
So today, it's for the community to formal things. We have a kindergarten group in a non-Jewish kindergarten, and which is functioning quite well with kosher food, and the children have a proper Jewish input. In the school, we have religion classes. In Germany, there is a state instituted 2 years ago. We have also Jewish religion, and I had the privilege to work in the Ministry of Education together with a group of incredibly talented Jewish educators who are mainly involved in formal Jewish religion teaching in schools to work on a plan which is now state approved, and it's accessible in the 3 cities where there are Jewish communities in Saxony. So our children attended, but it's as much more of how to say that this is more of a theoretical thing and not a practical thing. Especially, I have a daughter who is now 12 years old. February she had bat mitzvah, and she's in a school where she needs more Jewish input. Now today, thanks to the internet, a lot of options have opened up for e-learning. So both of my daughters, my son is only 5 years old, both of my daughters participate in different e-learning programs. The Lauer School in Berlin, which is a proper Shomer Mitzvot school and institution, they provide e-learning lectures daily for children in school age. At the same time, I have to be honest that right now we're considering sending our oldest daughter next year to Berlin to the Lauder School. Again, I have the privilege that Leipzig is just an hour and 15 minutes from Berlin with the fast train from train station to train station. So this is our plan at this time. I have to be honest that I think it's way beyond our realistic expectation to be able to open a Jewish school. And this is something we should not be wasting our efforts. We in Leipzig, the finances of the community is very, very different than in communities in America. Our finances are maybe mainly coming from the government, which is definitely enough to cover the heating and the electricity in this place. But to build a new institution, a new school, these funds are simply insufficient. So we do not know when this time will come that we'll be able to do that step, to have our own school. At the same time, I have to say that I think it's the model that we should pursue is much more than the model that in the 50s the United States used to have, the Hebrew school model, where the children are in the regular school and during the day, and in the afternoon they come to Jewish to have a Jewish input. This is a doable model, and this is something that we'll probably pursue in the future. So this is about the Jewish education for the children, the formal education, informal education. Obviously, we have camps. We have also some sort of Sunday school programs for youth on a regular basis. We also have a small kollel. Kollel means we have currently 5 Russian-speaking elderly gentlemen who each morning come together for 3 hours, learning Chumash, Mishnah, and Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, each for an hour, from Russian translation and with my guidance, and also from lectures from outside. And there are weekly shiurim. Now with the pandemic, it's a little bit tougher because the elderly community members do not really have the internet tools to use, even though we're using Zoom. But for many of the members, it's a bit of a new platform. They feel a little bit uncomfortable in that area. And again, it's important to understand that they're striving for Yiddishkeit is on a different level. We want to bring them back. It's a curative activity. So it's not that they are so thirsty on their own for Yiddishkeit, but we do our best. So these are the current.
That's wonderful. We have 1 more minute for one more question.
There's one more question.
You touched on it before. What is the current status of the relationship between
Yes.
the school and the government?
So we have not just the shul, but again, the whole Jewish community is quite unified in Germany. So there are 3 German communities in Saxony, and they're all under one federation. And they're all have one speaker, and that's what it means that I'm, so to say, the rabbi of the federal state. Who is, if there are religious questions, then usually I'm the one whose address is not just between the city, but also within the federal state of Saxony. But we have a wonderful relationship with the German government, and maybe at this point it's a good thing to mention that when I first came in 2002 to Germany, I came back then. There were no cheap flights. I came with a train. And when I always believed that I was raised in a liberal, open-minded home. But when I crossed the border, I said, are you out of your mind? You're sitting on a train in Germany. What the heck are you doing? But when I arrived and I spent a weekend in a Torah true yeshiva, this feeling has been gone. And within the last 18 years, the only feeling that I got, especially coming from Hungary, if there is a place in Europe that faced its past, okay, we could say they didn't have a choice. It is true. It's fair to say. But still, if there's a place in Europe that says we had to do with that, it was us. All my Hungarian relatives who experienced the Shoah, they kept telling me, you know, we did not hear a German word until we arrived to Auschwitz. We only heard Hungarian and Polish words until we got there. And the Hungarian government, and very often the Eastern European governments, Lithuania, Poland, they are very low in taking responsibility for their actions during the Second World War. The only country in Europe currently that takes full responsibility for its actions is Germany. Whether they have a choice, it's a different question. But still, I feel much more comfortable living as a Jew currently in Germany than I feel like living a Jew in Budapest, in Hungary.
Thank you. Thank you, Zsolt. Thank you, Rabbi Bala, and Sam, back to you. What a fascinating conversation.
Yes, so we have that surprise, right, Joel, that we discussed. So this is what we're going to do. Let me quickly conclude, and then we'll go into music, and then after that, we'll end. So before we start with the surprise, we just want to take the opportunity to thank Shai and Zsolt for a wonderful morning. Thank you so much for sharing with us from the bottom of your hearts. It was really felt that it was really authentic and genuine. Thank you so much. And lastly, we just want to give you the heads up. We have some upcoming programs as well. Save the date, December 6th with Yael Leibowitz, who's a former faculty member of Stern College and Ramaz, and currently living in Israel. And January 6th, which we're going to start advertising, Rachel Krause, the Director of Education at KJ, will be speaking to us. That's a Wednesday at 8 p.m. So thank you so much again for everyone, for the committee, for the shul, for giving us this opportunity, for you all who attended this morning. And without further ado, we'll conclude with a little bit of singing, and then we'll finish this morning's program. So Joel, please.
Again, I would like to thank you for having me. And I'm not a great singer, but I think, especially in Germany, the word Vehishe Amda is very, very fitting, and especially during the pogrom night, to say, we are here. Those guys are not here anymore, but we are here, and we have the promise of God. We are here. We're going to be staying here no matter what's happening. So the words of Vehishe Amda.
והישאמת לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד
עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו, והיא שימת על אבותינו, והיא שימת לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. איי איי איי
Wow.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and please stay safe and healthy. Please take care of yourself. Very, very important. No way to emphasize the importance of staying healthy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Litrot. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Go.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.